What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you another update post-Banlist for Swordsoul. That's right, they gave with one hand and took with the other. So we did lose, unfortunately, the protection from Nibiru in the form of the Baron, but we got back Protoss. Whether you see that as a benefit or a negative is entirely up to you. Now we do have two ways in order to protect from the Nibiru. You have Protoss, which will allow you to lock your opponent out of lights, but then it also locks you out of lights, so you do need to be a little bit careful. And then on top of that, we also have the Chow Feng route of play, but it is a free card combo. I'll show you that combo at the end of the video just so you can see the direct route in order to do that and then continue to make your plays. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Now, I get asked this every single time I do a Swordsoul profile. I got these tokens from Raider Trader 04. I'll try and put the link to his Instagram in the description below so you can go and talk to them and get these printed out. They are absolutely amazing. He does them on proper card backing and everything, and they look really, really kind of cool. But with all of that out of the way, I'm just going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got and explain why we've got it. Now, it hasn't changed massively, you just need to change the way you're going to play it. So, of course, with the Swordsoul lineup, it is pretty standard in the form of triple Mo Yi alongside triple of your long one. Now, the issue with long one now is your level 10s are a little bit more restricted. On the benefit, you don't care about worm locking yourself so early doors. It's absolutely fine. So what you're ideally aiming to do with this particular type of deck now is you're trying to get to the Chow Feng, which means you don't need to worry about Nibiru. Now, obviously, you can then kind of go down the mindset of, well, they still need to draw it. Have they got it? Let's play a game of chicken of if they got the rock or not. Entirely up to you. Now, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be using the long one in order to get you double draws off of the back of your main boss Sovereign, because this one will allow you to draw technically 2 cards by the time you synchro summon. So the deck is still really, really kind of cool. It allows you to draw in the hand traps, and that's the one benefit of this particular type of deck, is it does have space to play itself a decent range of either hand traps or counters to particular hand traps in the form of triple tactics. So continuing with the Swordsoul lineup, obviously triple Tyre is pretty standard, and then of course triple Ecclesia the Virtuous. It technically acts as a 6th copy of Mo Yi, but the issue is you do need to be able to have that Swordsoul card in the hand. The biggest issue with Incredible Ecclesia is the fact that it was never treated as a Swordsoul card. Otherwise, just being able to go, oh cool, Ecclesia into Tyre, Tyre banished the Ecclesia, happy days, but Konami probably saw that coming and was like, yeah, we can't let that happen. Then for the Tenyis, which I still feel is the best way to play this deck, even though you could consider playing something like the Swordsoul version, but I still feel the Tenyis just give you so much more advantage. It gives you that ability to maintain your normal summon. Of course, I know Super Heavies do that. Super Heavies can't get into Baron as easily anymore. It will just be going into a Synchro level 8, whereas the Tenyis give you the ability to give you Worm Locks in order to get yourself into a Chow Feng to lock your opponent out of Nibiru's, or technically light monster effects. If you wanted to, you could spice in other Yangtze monsters into the decks. You could dark lock them, you could fire lock them, but it will all come down to the Yangtzes that you are going to play. I also feel that the Tenyis give you a little bit more recursion, because if your opponent doesn't know what they do in the graveyard or forgets what they do, you actually get the ability of Ashuna to special from the deck, Adhara to add back from the banish zone, Vishuddha to be a nice go second target and bounce of any face-up card, so it lets you deal with floodgates and everything else. And then of course you do have the Shafana, that if they destroy a normal monster you control, hello Mr. Monk, then you get the ability to bring Monk back and then destroy the card that did it. So you get a nice little bit of 1-for-1 trading off the back of that as well. I do feel that these are really kind of cool, and a lot of people forget you can actually activate their effects to banish from the hand as well as from the graveyard. You just get more advantage if you're banishing them from the graveyard, because you would have already used them by getting them to the board. Now you get them to the board if you only control no effect monsters, so that's very, very important. Then of course the return of the Mac, Arch Nemesis Protoss. Now the reason this is so used and abused in this particular deck, or was back in the day, is because you can very easily search it off of Swordsoul Emergence, but you can also search it off of the back of the Heavenly Dragon cycle, which is quite funny. But we'll talk about those a little bit later on when we get to them. Let's talk about the return of the Mac, Protoss. So what does Protoss do? It cannot be normal summon set, and it must be special summon from the hand by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes. Very easily done in this deck, considering all of your Sword Souls, Wind, Water, Fire, and then of course with your Tenyis you've got Earth, Dark, and Light. Of course Ecclesia is a light itself as well. Very easily done. In doing so, you special summon this card and it cannot be destroyed by card effects. Very, very important. You declare 1 monster attribute on the field. Destroy all monsters on the field with that attribute until the end of the next turn. Neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute. So that's very, very kind of cool, because what that gives you the ability for is naturally Protoss is already a dark. So if you're in a dark matchup, you actually just call Protoss, hit darks. Protoss can't be destroyed by its own card effect, annoyingly so. And all it does is lock you out of making dark monsters. Whereas your most important cards are not going to be dark. Your most important cards are going to be fire, water, or of course light in the form of either your Yugioh, your Baxia, or of course your Chao Feng. So the only thing that really stops you getting into is getting into something like your Yazi, which you're only really going to want to be doing going second anyway, which by the time you get to that point, you're going to be out of your own lock. So very, very kind of cool. Then, of course, you've got your Swordsoul Emergence. Now, how can this search you out your Protoss? Well, a lot of people forget it actually has a secondary kind of clause to its search effect. So you add a Swordsoul monster from the deck to the hand, or if you control a Synchro monster, you get to add a Worm monster instead. Broken. And then, of course, you get the Banish It and Adapt the levels from the graveyard. We are still playing 2 Vessel, but arguably now that we've got Protoss back, you could be playing 3 Circle instead. I still like the balance of the Foolish Burial and Technical Add if you set it up correctly. And then of course Circle is just a quick play to tribute a Worm monster, to add a Worm monster from your deck to the hand. The best thing about that is if you do have a 10-year on the board and you don't want to go into Monk or you can't get rid of it, you can actually just use Circle to tribute it and go from there. Alternatively, you just turn that 10-year into a Monk, tribute off the Monk, and then you get the ability to special summon it instead. But of course, when you read Protoss, it cannot be normal summon set, and it must be special summoned from the hand by banishing 3 monsters. So it can't be special summoned through the Heavenly Dragon cycle. Remember that if your opponent tries to do that to you. But the idea is you're still going to be able to get 2 different attributes, because let's say you go Vishuddha, which is a dark, turn that into a Monk, which is an earth, activate Circle, tribute off the Monk. Straight away, you've got a dark and an earth in the graveyard. You haven't even conducted your normal summon, and you've directly searched out your Protoss, meaning that when you're trying to search off the back of your Emergence, straight away that's going to give you access into any of your 10-year monsters. Great success. Then of course 2-Pot of Desires. Very straightforward and simple on this one. You're playing a lot of your cards at 3s. Some of them are at 2s, but it's not the end of the world if you banish some of them. You can max them out at 3 if you really want to. Obviously the 1 Summit, you could cut this if you want to. I still quite like this as another option to extend. Like once you've got the Chao Feng, being able to have access to the Summit gives you the ability to go into an additional Synchro monster. And one of the other really kind of cool and important cards you can go for is stuff like your Draco Berserker of the 10-year. So when you're ending your board on like 2 level 8 Synchros plus a Chao Feng or a level 10 plus a Chao Feng, you're still in a very good position. 1 Call by the Grave to deal with pesky hand traps, and then of course you've got the 1 Blackout, which again arguably you could play at 2, but this one is a little bit more reserved in the list and you want to play it a little bit more defensively. For the hand traps, you adapt these to your local environment. We've gone with triple Ash Blossom, double Veiler. Sometimes that actually comes in quite clutch because you special summon down a Vishuddha, normal summon down Veiler. Straight away that is your Synchro level 8 for either a Baxia for a spin or the ability to go into a Yugioh. And then of course you've got triple Imperm, and then of course double Talents. Talents is completely flexible. You're just kind of looking for a card that helps you go second, but keeping in mind that if you do play Nibiru, it will shut off your 10 years when you get it to the board, so that's when you want to be probably considering something like Forbidden Droplet a little bit more so. But the Talents just gives you that reaction that if they hand trap you or during your turn, or if they monster affect you during your turn, if you're going first or second, you still have that ability to kind of crack back on them and get everything you need to, ideally leading you into that Protoss. So that's it for the entire main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. Now the extra deck is pretty straightforward on this one. I don't think it changes too much. It really comes down to whether you want to be playing 3 Monk, or in this scenario, 2 Monks. 3 months can be very, very important to you. Exactly in that example where I've just said it, you just turn a 10-year into Monk, you tribute the Monk off the board. You still want to be able to get into a Monk and ideally end your board on the Monk. Now, if you're not playing the 3 Monks, the alternative options for that is you're either going to be playing a Dragite or an Omega. So it's entirely up to you which one you want. I quite like the idea of Omega because it lets me put some of my 10-years back into my graveyard so I can use their graveyard effects again the next turn. And it also gives me that ability to rip one from my opponent's hand. It also gives me that ability that should my opponent have Nibiru before I'm able to set up protection, if I can go into Omega and they go, right, Nibiru, I can chain Omega to rip one from their hand. Obviously, if you hit Nibiru, slightly happy days. But more times than not, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to chain the Omega, you're going to rip one from your opponent's hand, and the reason you're going to do that is because at the very least, at the guarantee when Omega comes back, you have a monster on the board to defend you slightly. So it is entirely optional between Dragite and Omega. Really does come down to your personal preference. Neither of them are worms, unfortunately. So if you do worm lock yourself, you're not going to be going into either or, which is why you might consider a third Monk instead. So it really is up to you where you can flex these around. I will be showing you 16 cards in the extra deck, which will include both of these cards. It just comes down to multiple choice. So keep that in mind. The only other link monster we play is the Shaman of the 10-year. Entirely up to you on this one. I still really like it. There are those times when you discard it. Yes, you are locked in from special summoning worms only from the extra deck, but it doesn't mean you can't bring them back from the graveyard. Being able to discard and bring back most of your cards is still really invaluable. And then this is where we get into the synchros. So obviously the staple synchros of the 1 Yazi, the 1 Draco Berserker, 2 Baxia, even more important now that we can only rely on Chao Feng. The fact that Chao Feng needs this to be able to give you a light lock, which protects you from being hit with a Nibiru. Even more of a benefit if you're in the voiceless voice matchup, because then all their lights are pretty much null and voided, which is really kind of cool. Then, of course, you've got your 2 Yugioh, which is your most important Swordsoul, in my opinion, to help you level up. And then we've got 3 level 10s. And again, if you don't want to play the Ice Jade, you can take it out. But there are times when the Ice Jade effect can really come into clutch. But more times than not, you're probably going to go into your 2 Sovereigns. Obviously, Cheng Ying gives you that ability with all the banished cards to be buffed. And then anytime a card is banished, you banish 1 from the grave, 1 from the field. Nice success. And then, of course, you've got the long one, which is going to give you the ability to draw, as well as the ability to banish a card as well. Burning your opponent for 1200. Great success on top of being already banishing your opponent for a long one. This was a deck back in the day that just being able to burn your opponent for 1200 was just absolutely insanely massive and caused a lot of issues when you're trying to get into time. Really, really good deck. I'm glad that it's kind of got a bit of competitive nature back, but I'm also disappointed that it has to deal with a Nibiru more so. But you can't really single out Swordsoul just for that. I feel any synchro deck that was trying to protect from Nibiru that couldn't utilize other stuff like Crystal Wing and everything else is going to struggle just as much. You could put Crystal Wing in here if you wanted to, but more times than not, you're going to worm lock yourself, and it's not as easy as being able to go long 1, get you into a Baron nice and easy, and then continue your plays without using your normal summon, as it is to then try and get into a 7 and then use the 1 to bring back to go into a Crystal Wing. So that's it for the entire profile. Like I said, your entire options on the rest of this, just to kind of finish off your deck, is whether you want to be playing the 3 monks. If you want to be playing the 3 monks, you're only going to be able to choose one of these 2. If you're going to be playing 2 monks, you can use both of them. Really is up to you. You've got a little bit of flexibility, but I feel that the one thing with Swordsoul is when I take away this 1 monk here, I would say that these cards are all staple. I can't imagine any kind of Swordsoul deck that doesn't play these ones. It'd be absolutely chaos if you didn't. So that's it for the entire main deck. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the Chao Feng combo. The Chao Feng combo is technically a 2-card combo, but then you don't want to just end on a Chao Feng. You want to be able to extend your board a little bit further, which is why you then need, annoyingly, specifically Emergence, or another 10-yi in your hand, but then it increases from a 3-card combo to a 4-card combo. So very simply, the combos that you're going to need to be looking for is you're going to be needing to look for 2 of your Sword-Souls, ideally like Adhara and your Ashuna. And then the 1 card you're going to want, just because it gives you, technically your 1-card Swordsoul play, is the Emergence. Now, what you can do here is, because you control non-monsters, you can summon down the Ashuna. You're going to link this off and go into your Monka de Tenyi. Helps if I zoom out the camera so you can see the entire board. Big brain plays. Go into your Monka de Tenyi, because you control no effect monsters, special summon down the Adhara. Now at this point you still control a non-effect monster, so you can banish your Ashuna, locking you into worms for the rest of this turn. Annoyingly, summon out your Vishuddha. You're then going to synchro these 2 together and go into your Baxia. Yes, you are running into Nibiru territory, but what you're doing is you're putting your opponent in a position of, I haven't used my normal summon yet, I still have 3 more unknown cards in my hand that can still lead me to the rest of the plays that I may need. Now is the point to stop me. Activate Baxia to tribute off the monk in order to bring back your Adhara. Now you can use Adhara's effect to synchro these 2 together, and this will then allow you to get into your Chao Feng, which allows you to lock your opponent out of attributes depending on the Yang Xings you used, which you used the Baxia, which was of course light. So now your opponent cannot use light effects, means they can't Nibiru you, very important. If you get a non-effect monster to the board, which you will do off of the back of the Emergence, you can now use stuff like Adhara to recycle everything you need to. Which is why we're going to activate Emergence. The one you're going to want to go for is Tyre. Now this is on the assumption that you don't know anything else in your hand or anything in your house is not a worm. If you do know that one of these is a worm, then of course you're going to go for Moyi, Reveal, and get an additional draw. You then get the ability of Tyre to banish the Emergence from the graveyard. Yes, of course you could banish one of your worm monsters, but at least with this you can adapt the level should you need to or should you want to. Regardless, what you're going to do is spawn a nice token there. And this is then going to give you the ability to synchro together if you want to. But before you do that, use your Adhara to add back your Ashuna. So we're going to add that back to our hand. You're then going to synchro these 2 together. You do get the ability of the Tyre if you want to Foolish Berry. And that's where you would change up, rather than adding a Blackout, for example, you'd actually change up in order to add Summit. Now, again, this will all adapt depending on what else you have in your hand. So we'll go for your Yugioh. Yugioh effect will now trigger. Now your options to search out will of course be your Blackout or your Summit. Blackout gives you the most defensive option because you'll still have your 3 cards in the hand. You'll have the ability of Blackout to pop either of these. Obviously the negate off of the Yugioh as well, so you get a little bit more. If you wanted to get that bit more greedy, you can actually go for Summit. And the reason you'd go for Summit is it allows you to bring one back from the graveyard. So that will then allow you to bring something back like Tower or Tyre, or because you control a Synchro monster, you can bring back anyone, so you get to bring back your Baxia. Now, obviously, this all depends on what else you have available to you and how far you want to extend, but the idea is to be the most defensive you can possibly be. Playing under Nibiru, you're probably going to want to go for Blackout and then remain with the additional 3 cards in the hand. So if your entire board does get completely nuked, you still have a Shuna that starts everything back off. You've got a Vishuda in the graveyard to banish and bounce back. You also then have the ability of being able to attempt to try and recycle some of your other resources, and you'll draw 1 more card for turn. So you've got the ability to pretty much play with everything you need to and recover what you need. You've got the negates off the back of the Cheese out as well. Really, really important. Anyway, I hope this combo is kind of giving you the baseline of where you need to look in order to put the deck together, or how you're going to be able to play through stuff like Nibiru right now. It's not ideal. No one said it ever was. But what you do also have in that scenario as well, as long as you control your Chow Feng, is you can very easily activate the summit. Oh, that's not the summit. Activate your emergence, wherever it may be. You could technically activate the emergence, and this would then, let me just reset the states. You can kind of go where you got. So in your graveyard, you would have a Baxia, you wouldn't have a Tyre, but you'd have a Monk, and you'd have a Vishuda. So then what you would do is you'd actually activate the emergence, add a Swordsoul monster from the deck, or if you control a Synchro monster, you get to add a Worm. So this is how you're going to get direct access to, when I find it, Protoss. Protoss can summon itself down by banishing a Dark, an Earth, and of course a Light. And then of course you can use Protoss' effect to technically call Light if you wanted to, be a little bit silly, or just call Dark. So now at this exact moment in time, you'll still have 2 additional cards in the hand. You would still then obviously had the ability to banish. You wouldn't have had the ability to banish the Adhara because you wouldn't have a non-effect monster on the board. So keep that in mind. You would actually lose a card advantage in the hand. But you still have 2 cards in the hand. Your opponent can't special summon dark monsters, which is very important, and they can't use light effects. So obviously in the fire matchup, terrible thing to do. But the idea is there. What I'm trying to show you is you still have access to your Swordsoul card. You have access directly to Protoss, which come off the list, and you've got the way to protect from Nibiru or make your opponent go, right, I have to Nibiru you now, and all you're going to lose is the Chow Feng. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. Like I said, Swordsoul haven't really changed a huge amount. They just got a nice little bit of a buff by having Protoss come back to 1. But then on the other flip side of that, they lost their direct protection from Nibiru, which is quite what I think the format going forward is going to be. I think it's going to be Nibiru Turbo, and everyone is just going to get hit with it. Unless there is any inbuilt archetypal protection from Nibiru, I feel that it is just going to get a lot of smashy face with the Rock, unfortunately, but is what it is. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.